Raiding has always been one of my personal favourite things to do in World of Warcraft, and now that Wrath of the Lich King Classic is finally out, we're going to be encountering some of the most well-remembered encounters this game has ever seen. Welcome all, my name is Will E. Today we're checking out the best boss fights from every tier of Wrath Classic. Let's get straight into it. First of all, compared to Wrath back in 2008, creatures as well as bosses in Naxxramas have had their health and damage boosted up by about 30% to allow for some more interesting interactions between players and bosses in the earlier weeks of the tier being available. Honourable mentions in Naxxramas go to Patchwork. Those buffed up hateful strikes are going to be the cause of many a wipe in the first few weeks, I can tell you that. Second is to Sapphiron, who drops one of the very few remnants of an achievement left in Wrath. The key to the focusing iris will be needed to begin the Malygos encounter over in the Eye of Eternity in Caldera. Only one person in the raid will need it though, so it's not going to be too tough to get. In tier 7 you'll also face off against the likes of Kel'Thuzad for a second time perhaps, Malygos of course, and Sartharion as the end of tier bosses. I think the last one has the most potential to be interesting though, as I would say Sartharion is the big challenge of tier 7. Found under Wyrmrest Temple, Sartharion's lair features a dynamic level of difficulty. Now you can deal with the 3 drakes surrounding the central boss in advance, which is going to make the encounter considerably easier, but if you take on Sartharion leaving the drakes alive, he will gradually call them down to join the battle, adding their own mechanics into the fight, such as increasing damage taken from other mechanics significantly, hatching eggs which spawn whelplings, or enraging the boss. New to Wrath Classic is a further health buff added through choosing to fight Sartharion alongside his drakes, making strategies to zerg him down as soon as possible much less viable early on. Defeating the 3 drakes variation of this boss adds many new pieces of loot to the table, a mount as well as titles. Next, it's time for the Ulduar part of the video. Let's start with Mimiron, one of the keepers of Ulduar. Found midway through the raid after a tram ride to the colossal Spark of Imagination, this encounter begins with the keeper busying around his latest creation, the Leviathan MK2, a siege tank variation with several hard-hitting abilities such as Shock Blast, which will instantly dispatch any melee player too slow on their feet. As you gradually lower his health bar, the next stage and next creation will be revealed, the VX-001 Anti-Personnel Assault Cannon, a giant 2-armed machine which has signature abilities like Rocket Strike, which does a solid 5 million damage to anybody unfortunate enough to be caught by it, and spinning up, causing the entire raid to have to get behind the boss fast or be deleted. Next phase has the aerial command unit floating from the central platform. Here the raid splits, with ranged gradually damaging down the boss whilst being careful on threat, and melee dealing with bots on the ground. These bots will drop magnetic cores needed to ground the aerial unit, and then everybody can DPS it down together. And once you've dealt with that, the final phase of the encounter begins, as all 3 creations are bolted together to make Voltron, a mega boss that contains some of the toughest mechanics from each phase. So that's already a lot to deal with, and that is the normal mode. You see the big red button in the back over there? Why don't you go and press that and see what happens?
Didn't you see the sign that said, "Do not push this button"?
You've just activated one of Ulduar's hard modes, and a harder one at that. Firefighter puts an enrage of 10 minutes on the encounter and adds new mechanics, buffs all units' health, and most notably has fire constantly spawning throughout the encounter, adding a whole new level of difficulty to it. Next up is an old god, and how could he not make this list? After having driven all the other Titan Keepers to madness, and us having to set that right, it's clear no prison could hold the monster known as Yogg Saron. The encounter can be accessed right at the end of the instant, starting off with summoning the boss himself by defeating several Gardens of Yogg Saron on top of Sarah. With Yogg Saron emerging, the real encounter begins. After a short period of time, portals to the Mind's Eye materialize. Entering shows you several visions, including the forging of the Dragon Soul and the assassination of King Lane. Dispelling the illusions, you expose the brain of Yogg Saron, and once the brain team has done enough damage, you'll enter the final phase. This is the DPS race portion of the boss, where immortal guardians regularly spawn, who, as their name suggests, are, immortal, unless they get hit by a certain mechanic, that is. Also during this phase, Yogg Saron attempts to rapidly deteriorate the sanity of the raid. That's another mechanic special to this boss actually, sanity. Several mechanics will make you lose it and a few gain it, and if it ever depletes entirely, you become insane and must be dealt with quickly. There is also a lot of customization players have access to through the Titan Keepers, which you have already saved. Each of Mimiron, Thorim, Freya, and Hodir can assist you in the encounter with incredibly helpful effects like Freya's Sanity Well, which restores sanity to the player, or Thorim's Titanic Storm, which is the only way to permanently defeat Immortal Guardians. Attempting Yogg Saron with no aid from the Keepers increases the difficulty of the encounter significantly. The achievement for defeating him under these conditions is called Alone in the Darkness, and adds bonus loot, titles, and of course Mimiron's head to the loot table. An honourable mention here to Algalon the Observer as well. This is a hard mode only boss that can be accessed after having cleared many of the other hard mode encounters in the raid. The kicker here is that this boss has a timer for how long players have before he will despawn for the remainder of the reset, and that's only 1 hour. Oh, and lore-wise, he's sending a message to essentially destroy the entire world, so no pressure. This visually impressive encounter has you quite literally fighting off space, featuring constellations, black holes, and collapsing stars. Though unlike other bosses we've gone over so far who have different levels of difficulty, this one will be a little bit trickier to see as he is hard mode only. Moving on from Ulduar though to Trial of the Crusader, there are a few memorable encounters here too, such as the faction champions, a kind of brawly PvE PvP crossover, having your faction take on the opposing one to prove your strength, and who could forget the opening voice line,
"You face Jaraxxus, Eladar Lord of the Burning Legion!"
But the one to highlight here is Anub'arak, the second time you will be fighting this boss during this expansion, the first time being an end boss of the dungeon Azjol-Nerub of course. This time around he is a lot more challenging. One of his phases has him chase down players under the ground aiming to impale them, all of the while the raid is dealing with adds and shooting down frost orbs to create safe permafrost zones on the ground. During the final phase he unleashes a leeching swarm, which on heroic difficulty drains 30% of players' current health every single second, meaning your entire raid's health bars are looking scarily low all of the time. And on top of there being normal or heroic for Trial of the Crusader, there are also achievements for defeating bosses with no wipes and even no deaths in the raid at all, both of which add various rewards such as titles, mounts, and of course bonus loot. And finally we get to Icecrown Citadel, and if there was one fight which you just cannot miss during this expansion, it has to be the guy on the front of the game box, Arthas Menethil, the Lich King. At the pinnacle of the Frozen Throne, after having battled through the enormous Icecrown Citadel, this fight is the culmination of the entire expansion. The fight starts off instantly with several deadly mechanics that must be managed correctly, such as Necrotic Plague, applying a huge damage over time effect to a target, as well as Infest, meaning that healers have to be super on the ball, keeping the raid topped off. Phase 2 sees the iconic Defile ability enter the encounter. Think of it as like a Mega Death and Decay, which expands each time it deals damage and can easily cover near the entire platform if handled incorrectly. In Phase 3, the Lich King attempts to harvest the raid's souls and teleports them inside of Frostmourne itself, where they have to assist King Terenas in defeating a Soul Warden before they are returned back to the encounter. At 10%, the big twist of the fight happens as Arthas casts Fury of Frostmourne, instantly killing every single member of the raid and preparing to resurrect, in his words, the greatest fighting force Azeroth has ever seen. That is until Tyrion calls on the light and finally breaks free from his icy tomb, and players are able to once and for all put an end to Arthas's reign. There are varying levels of difficulty on this fight too, beyond just normal and heroic. A buff will be applied eventually, allowing players to perform up to 30% better in their combat role, which makes seeing this final battle of Icecrown Citadel very achievable. And those are some of my picks from the most memorable bosses throughout Wrath of the Lich King. There are so many more that are great and are worth talking about too, so do let us know which encounters you're looking forwards to doing again, or maybe for the first time ever. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you in Northrend very soon.